I'm Sari.
And I'm Haley.
And this is Seamwork Radio. Welcome back to Seamwork Radio, where we share practical ideas for building a creative process so you can sew with intention and joy. And today we're talking about how you can make even the most basic patterns feel exciting to sew. We're going to cover choosing the colors that make you feel your best, picking out fabrics that you love, and how to find ideas for details that really make a basic garment feel special. All right, let's get into our icebreaker for today. So Haley, what's the item in your wardrobe that you wear the most? So we're going to pick one me-made item and then just one overall.
Okay. For me-made, this really changes from season to season for me. Right now, as we're recording this, it's January and it's cold. And so I have this Oslo sweater cardigan that I wear all the time at home because it's basically like a glorified robe.
Mm-hmm.
It's a little bit like too big for me, so it's maybe a little like schlumpy, but I wear it constantly at home. Non-me made, I have a boring answer, just jeans. Whatever my jean of the moment is. Right now, I have some kind of like button fly, high-waisted boyfriend jeans that I'm quite fond of.
I think jeans would probably be my overall as well. I have a pair of jeans that I have in 5 different like colors,
Nice,
including black and white, and that's 90% of what I wear most days if I'm not in leggings or something at home. I think my me-made, there's quite a few that I wear pretty often. One that comes to mind is it's actually not something I sewed, but something I knit, which is this really cozy wool sweater that I wear just all the time. It's just so warm and cozy. I love it. So that's probably my number one, but I also have a sweatshirt, an Oliver sweatshirt that I made. And I wear that quite a bit in the colder months too. It's like this really pretty French terry in this like really nice blue color. And I love the shade of it. And it just feels cozy, but also kind of pretty at the same time, just because the color is so nice. So, and it looks good with like a little scarf. I can kind of dress it up a little bit and still feel really, really cozy.
Oh, that sounds perfect.
Yeah. So that's a good one. Yeah. So give us your icebreaker for a future episode if you have a question for us. If you're a member, you can go to seamwork.com/go/icebreakers, and that'll take you to a thread on our community where you can leave a question that we'll use on a future episode. All right. Well, let's get into our topic for today. So several years ago, I was doing a closet purge, and I noticed that I had all these things in my closet that I'd made, but few things that I actually wore on a day-to-day basis that I'd made. So the reason, I think, was that I thought that sewing wardrobe basics was just kind of boring, and I never really wanted to do basics. So instead, I would sew all these kind of fancy dresses or all these more vintage-inspired things and these really pretty colors, but then I rarely had the chance to wear them in real life. So I decided to change that, but I needed to make sewing basics feel personal and feel fun. So nowadays, I'm really focused on creating clothing that, 1, I get a lot of use out of, and 2, that really feels special and personal. So today, Haley and I are sharing our favorite tips for taking even the most simple and basic patterns and making them your own with really personal touches. So Haley, what's your favorite kind of basic to sew?
I would have to say that it's probably knitwear. I just love how satisfying it is. Once you've cut it out, most of the time it comes together really quick. It's easy to batch sew, and it's a really nice way to feel like you've made a really big impact on your wardrobe of basics in a short amount of time. You get a lot of bang for your buck.
Yeah. Knitwear is just, again, yeah, just like you said, it's so fast, it's so easy, and it's so wearable. It is really fun to sew. Definitely, that's true for me too. I also really like just really soft pants of all kinds. That's another one that I love to make and I love to wear.
What are the key basics that are in your wardrobe?
For me, I think there's quite a few, but I feel like they've evolved over time and with my lifestyle changing. But I think the main basics in my wardrobe are, first of all, denim. That's a big one. Like I said, I wear that a lot. Nice tops, like simple, nice tops. Woven tops are another one. T-shirts, obviously, but I really like long sleeve shirts because they're so layerable. A crew neck long sleeve shirt is definitely a staple in my wardrobe. And then sweaters. Sweaters are something I wear quite a bit. We live in a pretty cool climate. It's hot in the summer, but the rest of the year it's pretty cool. So sweaters get a lot of wear in my wardrobe. What about you? What are your key basics?
I agree that it's also really changed over time and it changes from season to season for me as well. I would say some of the things that transcend seasons are any kind of button up. I love it for the winter to wear a sweater over to the top or with like a great jacket. In the summertime, I think it's really cute with like a little pair of linen shorts.
Mhm.
So button ups are a big one. I just love a crisp white crew neck
Yeah.
t-shirt. It's so boring, but I feel like whenever I put on a sweater or like a button up or something just feels like a little bit unstyled, putting on a white t-shirt underneath always makes me feel like really polished and intentional. There's something about that. For me, I would say those are some of my key basics. I do love like a sweater, a wool sweater in particular.
Yeah.
Makes me feel really fancy.
Yeah. Me too. For me, like a hand knit sweater, or if it's not hand knit, it doesn't necessarily have to be hand knit, but I love my hand knit sweaters and something in a really nice texture and color. I've been really thinking about my next sweater that I want to knit and making sure that the yarn is, really soft and easy to wear and um, has a really nice texture to it, and that just I love that, even if it's a really basic shape.
Yeah, I'm a very casual knitter, so I don't knit things like sweaters, but I am an avid thrifter, and it's something that I love shopping for in thrift stores. If I hit a thrift store, I will always look at the men's sweaters and the women's sweaters because it's really easy to find like higher quality sweaters than what you'd find at like, most stores.
Yeah, because most of the new ones today are acrylic, or at least, in the fast fashion world, they're kind of acrylic or, poly. But I was at a thrift store this weekend and I went right to the men's sweaters, and I swear there were like 2 men's sweaters there and everything else is like sweatshirts and just not actually sweaters. It was really weird. But maybe I think it was just this one particular thrift store just doesn't
Never
have a
going
lot.
back.
Yeah. No, actually, I went there to get baskets because I decided we just came back from a 2-week break for the holidays, and it was Sunday, so the last day before we went back to work, and I just got this impulse. I had to do one more thing to be productive, so I went to the thrift store and bought all these baskets and completely reorganized my pantry. So I know, it was amazing, and it made me realize how much I love a project that I can start and finish in the same day. It was so satisfying.
There must be something like cosmic happening because I also was organizing my kids' toys the last day before we came back from break because I was like, this has to get done.
Yeah.
It's so important to me suddenly.
Yeah. So anyways, at the thrift store for the baskets, but I had to look at the men's sweaters too, because I totally agree with you. It's usually a great place to look.
It is. Is there a pattern that you've made like over and over and over again?
There are a few. One that comes to mind is our Joss pants, the Seamwork Joss pants, which are just a pair of elastic waist, loose fit pants. And I just made them again in a black silk charmeuse, which was on my winter wardrobe plan. So if you're following along on YouTube, I go through all the things I'm planning to make for each season, and then I do a recap of what I actually made. And so you'll see these if you're a subscriber on YouTube. But I just wore them yesterday, and I was telling Ken how much I love them because they're so soft and comfortable. They feel like you're just wearing pajamas all day. I can layer tights under them so they're a little bit warmer in these cold months, and just I put like a cashmere sweater over the top, and it was so warm and cozy and luxurious, but felt really comfortable.
Ooh, I have made a few pairs, probably 3 pairs of Joss. I would say I have a sweatshirt pattern that I self-drafted. Maybe it was definitely more than 10 years ago because it was before I moved to Portland. And over the years, I've probably made that the most out of any pattern. It's just a regular schmegular kind of a sweatshirt. And I have 2 cut lengths, so I can make it kind of cropped if I want to, and I can also make it like a classic length sweatshirt. And that gets a lot of playtime. And it's really easy to like hack and just do different things too. I've made like t-shirt versions of it. I love something that's very hackable.
Yeah. I'm already thinking about my spring wardrobe plans right now. So if you're listening, we're recording this in January. You're listening to this I think in March. So I am right now in January thinking about my spring wardrobe plans. And I was originally going to do just a few things, but now I'm kind of thinking I want to add a sweatshirt into the mix because it seems like a really good spring project.
Yeah.
And fast and easy and very wearable.
Ooh, I can't wait to see what you make. I feel like you could do it in like such a great springy color and it would be perfect.
Yeah.
Well, that leads me really well into our first tip, which is choose a color that you love. Just because something is basic doesn't mean that it has to be beige. That is, unless you absolutely love beige. I'm a beige girly. I don't blame you. But what I like to do is take a look at my closet and notice the colors that I really enjoy wearing the most. You can even document your outfits for like a set period of time with photos, put them in an album on your phone. You can even add notes and look at it at the end of that set period and see what patterns you discover, what colors you end up wearing a lot. And also, I like to add notes because sometimes you wear something a lot, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you feel your best in it or like it that much. It could be kind of a default thing. I realized this a few years ago that I wore a lot of black, and I don't dislike black, but I realized that I liked it a lot more as an accent than as like a primary focal point of my outfits. And I discovered that while I was doing an experiment of taking pictures of my outfits. And it was like really helpful, and it's helped me to kind of steer away from black as a safe color. And then remember that your palette can really change with the seasons. What you really like wearing in the winter might be a little bit different than what you like wearing in the spring. In Design Your Wardrobe, we help you to create a palette of neutrals, basics, and statement colors. I really love this exercise. It helps you really think beyond neutrals to your basics. And for instance, maybe your neutrals are like beige and black and like a chocolate brown, but your basics can be like a brighter denim blue or like an ochre color. They can be worn with other like more statement colors, but they can still kind of anchor your outfit a little bit. So these all can be really helpful exercises to help you hone in on the colors that you love to wear the most.
Yeah, I love that. Before we started recording, we were talking about color seasons and getting a color analysis and how fun that would be. So you're talking about black kind of made me think about that because I feel like a lot of people, once they get their colors done, realize that black is not the color for them, even though it's such a safe color. And I'm kind of scared to learn that for myself because I love to wear black. I'm wearing all black right now.
Yeah, I realize it's not like, I don't think it's like it doesn't make me sparkle, as they say in the color community. But I do love it as like a accent in my outfits. And I find that when I use it that way, it's feels like a lot more authentic and like I can see me a little bit better.
Yeah. Well, I definitely think we should get our colors done. I think it would be so fun.
Let's do it.
I've never attempted it. All right, the next tip is to find a tried and true fabric and pattern combo. So one thing I like to do is find a basic pattern that I really like and then pair it with a fabric that comes in a lot of different colors. Because then I can make that same pattern in a bunch of different colors and I know that it's going to work really well. I think this is really especially helpful for knits because, as you guys know, every knit fabric performs a little differently. And so once you kind of nail the right fabric to go with your pattern, you can just make it over and over again and not have to worry about that extra factor, that extra variable. And you'll know it'll fit, it'll look good on you. And you can make it again and again. So for example, I've made the Seamwork Alice tee, which is a long sleeve crew neck tee. It's a real basic in my wardrobe. And I've made it 3 times in organic cotton rib knit from IC Fabrics. And they all fit in exactly the same way. And the fabric comes in all of these great colors. And I know that I could just make it again and again, and I'm always going to be happy with the result. So if you can find that magic fabric and pattern combo that works for you, whether it's knit or maybe it's woven, then you can do it again and again. Like there's tons of fabrics out there that just come in either a lot of colors or a lot of different prints that you can play around with. So I think that's a really great tip for basics, especially.
that's what so many ready-to-wear brands do
Mhm.
from season to season is they just recreate the same basics again with maybe like a slightly different length, but the same fabrics, different colors over and over again. And you can definitely borrow that tip from them.
Yeah.
Our next tip is to study high-end basics. So there's definitely a difference between a t-shirt that you buy at Target and then a really pricey organic cotton t-shirt that you pay like 5 times as much for. I'm not saying that it's like always worth paying 5 times as much for, but there's definitely a difference, and it can be nice to just observe what those differences are and study them. And then you can add those same finishes to your own me-made basics. So the differences might be in the finishes, the fabrics, all of those little details. What I like to do is visit a high-end boutique or department store in person and take notes of all of the fancy touches on even the most basic designs. I do this sometimes when I'm doing like research for an upcoming season, as I'll observe what more high-end companies are doing for their basics so that we can maybe incorporate some of those same things.
Mhm.
Some of the things to think about, like I was saying, was fabric composition, seam finishes, edge finishes, stitch quality, and then just special details in general. And you can try applying all of these ideas to your next basic project, and it'll feel a lot more intentional and special to you, and you might learn a new skill or two while you're at it. So, Sari, do you have any favorite places or brands that you like to look for basics?
Well, I think there's a couple things. There's if for in-person shopping, we've got a lot of cool boutiques in Portland
Mm-hmm.
that are fun to look through, and often they do have some really nice basics. And so you can kind of discover new brands that way. So if you have any small boutiques in your area that you can look at, I think that's probably the best place to look and, really find things that maybe you haven't seen before. I think in person is always best when you're thinking about these details, but if you're shopping online, there's also often really detailed pictures that you can look at and get a sense of what kinds of details are added. You can learn about the fabric composition, things like that. So even though it's not high end, most of my basics, if I do buy basics, a lot of them come from Everlane.
Yeah.
I think they do really pretty good quality stuff at a fair price. So that's usually where I look, and I think they've got some really nice basics, and they do tend to kind of vary their basics with little trend elements in there. So I think it's a good place to look. What about you?
Yeah, kind of similarly, I think Quince is a nice online place to look. I do feel like a department store can be really helpful.
Mhm.
Going to like a Nordstrom, a Saks, something like that can be nice for just looking at the basics that are like way out of my tax bracket, but
Yeah.
fun nonetheless. It's a great place to see a lot all at once, from more stylized things to just like the really most basic of basics.
Yeah. When I lived in San Francisco, I just loved going into Neiman Marcus or
Mhm.
Barney's and looking at what was there that I couldn't afford, but that I could, incorporate into my sewing. So if you live in a big city, definitely take advantage of those
Yeah,
kinds of department stores. Our next tip is to choose luxurious fabrics. So, one thing that always makes a basic project feel special to me is choosing a fabric that I absolutely love. Like I mentioned that sweatshirt before, that I just love the fabric, I love the color. If you take a t shirt as an example, you can make a t shirt in cotton jersey and still make it feel really special. But you could also open your horizons and make it in, for example, a lightweight linen knit for summer, or a really beautiful pointelle rib for a little bit of lace, or even a soft merino wool for the winter. There are just so many ways that you can vary a basic pattern just with fabric choice. And the more you can familiarize yourself with fabric, the more ideas you'll be able to generate.
definitely. Oh, I love a pointelle knit.
Oh, me too.
So pretty. All right. Our next tip is to add intentional details. If you study high-end basics, like I mentioned a little bit earlier, you'll almost always notice subtle details that make a really big difference. And just because something is a basic doesn't mean it has to be plain. You could add anything from a patch pocket to an interesting, like in an interesting shape, or even a brightly colored lining. beautiful glass buttons, maybe a slightly contrasting stitching for the hems. These are all like really small details that can really elevate something. So if you're feeling really uninspired by a basic, even if you know you would wear it a lot, think about those tiny little design details that can transform the way you really feel about it.
Yeah, absolutely. This dress I'm wearing right now, which is one I just finished making, it's all plain black. It's like a black poplin, but I put these vintage black porcelain buttons on it. And I, I don't know, it doesn't really stand out. It's not something you'd necessarily notice, but I notice it and it just makes me happy. Although they do hurt my fingers when I'm buttoning it.
Oh, no.
Yeah, because they're so hard. Like porcelain or glass buttons are so hard compared to plastic. It's kind of funny. I never thought about it before, but I noticed my fingers aching after I buttoned it up because it has a lot of buttons. All right, our final tip is to take a moment to design. So I want to draw all these ideas together and encourage you to take at least 15 minutes to design your basic project. Because I find that if I say to myself, I'm going to make a basic t-shirt, that feels kind of uninspiring. But if I say to myself, I'm going to design the perfect t-shirt for myself exactly the way I want it and either sketch it out or even just make a list of what's going to make it personal and special to me, I automatically feel more inspired. And by the way, next week we're going to talk about choosing fabrics for statement pieces in your wardrobe. So be sure to tune in for that because we're going to talk about sewing basics versus statement pieces. So I think that's going to be really fun. All right, so that kind of does it for all of our tips. What's your big takeaway from today's episode, Haley?
I think my big takeaway is I was reflecting on the fact that when we sew our own clothing, we have so much choice down to these really minute details. And I think that we're trained from shopping ready to wear and growing up in a culture that like values like instant gratification and blending in maybe a little bit. We have this illusion that we have a lot of choice where you can go online and you can buy all sorts of things, anything you want. And I think getting over that idea that things have to come as they are, that you have to make things as they are, is something that sewing teaches you to do. And it's a constant practice of reminding yourself that if you don't like something, that you can change it into literally anything else. And I think it's just interesting to think about the illusion of choice versus having like actual design autonomy when you know how to sew. And it's kind of like a little interesting food for thought thing that I'm still mulling over a little bit.
That is really interesting. I do think sometimes we're so ingrained in that way of thinking that you have to do it exactly the way you see it that we can kind of forget that we have so much choice we have so much actual choice as sewers to make things exactly the way we want them and in our own personality and in our own style. And not necessarily just, what everybody else is doing.
Yeah, totally. I think that we learn it early on in our sewing that we can choose the fabrics that we want and the patterns that we want. And sometimes it can be easy to be complacent in that and be like, cool, I have design control. Great.
Yeah.
That we don't dig down into those details on how to make even like seemingly mundane things unique to us.
And I think there's also a part of, at least for me, this is also something that I think is ingrained from our cultures that I just want to get to it and make it and have it.
Sure.
Have the thing instead of taking the time to actually design exactly what I want. And I think that's also part of our kind of consumerist culture of wanting the outcome rather than enjoying what the reason I'm actually sewing is because I want to design this thing and make it with my hands and, feel some kind of emotional connection to it. Otherwise, I would just buy it at H&M or whatever if I didn't care. So it's kind of interesting to think about why push yourself to finish it and make more and more things instead of actually enjoying that process, which is the whole reason you're sewing anyway. Presumably, maybe. Maybe for you, just want a lot of stuff. I can't speak for you. So, yeah, I think my big takeaway, one of the things that I was thinking about as we went through this is as you know, Haley, I'm on this project to sew 80% of my wardrobe and have 80% of my wardrobe be handmade. And that's kind of what I'm sharing on the YouTube channel as I kind of go through that journey. And I've really noticed since committing to that challenge that I'm a lot more interested in the wearability of what I'm making and making sure that it fits my life, my actual life, and not like some imaginary life that I used to have or wish I had. Because I think that's a trap that I've kind of fallen into is, I used to live in a city. I used to be out and about a lot more, walking on sidewalks and things like that. And now it's not so much that. And, when I do leave the house, it's usually taking my dogs for a walk on a gravel road. And that's very different. But I feel like the way I've been approaching my clothing hasn't evolved with that lifestyle necessarily. So just committing to this project of really thinking about what I actually wear and how I can make more of what I actually wear has been so enlightening for me and has led me to sewing more basics and really thinking about those basics and how to make them feel good day to day. So that's been a really interesting journey for me so far.
Yeah, I've really enjoyed following along with it. I can't wait to see what you make in 2025.
Yeah, it's really fun. And it's led me to buy less stuff, which is really cool. I still love secondhand though. That's hard to quit.
It is.
All right. Well, we've talked a lot about fabric today, and I even mentioned IC Fabric, which is where I got that rib knit that I've used for all my Alice tees. I absolutely love their knits, and they are one of our partners. So if you're a Seamwork member, you can get discounts at some of our favorite indie fabric stores, including IC Fabrics, and you can save anywhere from 10 to 20% off your purchases as a member. And a lot of people say these discounts alone pay for their entire membership. So you can see a list of participating fabric stores at seamwork.com/deals. And if you decide to join us, then you'll get those discounts too. And if you like this episode, we'd love it if you leave us a review on Apple Podcasts or whatever podcast platform you're listening to us on. We love to hear from you guys, and those 5-star reviews really help other people to discover the podcast too. You can also follow us on YouTube at Seamwork Video. I've mentioned it a few times throughout this episode. Definitely check us out over there. It's a lot of fun making videos for you guys. Follow us on Instagram at Seamwork. And if you'd like to join Seamwork and become part of our private community, plus get access to hundreds of sewing patterns and dozens of sew-along classes, our podcast listeners get a 50% off lifetime discount when you join at seamwork.com/go/podcast50. So that's seamwork.com/go/podcast50. And that does it for us this week. I'm Sari.
And I'm Haley.
And this is Seamwork Radio. Seamwork Radio is brought to you by the team at Seamwork. Seamwork's an online community that supports you in creating a wardrobe that feels right for you. When you join us at Seamwork, you become part of our private community of makers, and you also get access to monthly sew-along classes, a library of over 200 sewing patterns, and tons of great resources to help guide you through the sewing adventure that you choose. Podcast listeners can get half off a Seamwork Unlimited membership, which means you can download as many of those 200 plus patterns as you want at any time, and our community will be there to guide and support you. If you'd like to join us for half off, just visit seamwork.com/go/podcast50. You can also find us on Instagram at Seamwork, or visit our YouTube channel, which is called Seamwork Video. We love hearing from you, so let us know if there's a topic or a personal story that you'd like us to cover. Thanks for listening to Seamwork Radio.